There's a lot in swimming as a technical sport, and it's almost a skill acquisition sport, isn't it, compared to riding and running, where fitness is a major thing. You still need to have good technique on the bike. You still need to run with good form. But if you don't have any of that really good technical side in swimming, no matter how fit you are, would you say it's fair to say that, you're going to stay the same? And there's going to be minimal improvement unless you actually pay attention to the skill and the technique of swimming.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's and like an example of that is the same guy I was talking about who was gracefully drowning on Sunday. He was kind of all over the shop, body was going everywhere, and he's a super fit guy. That morning he'd run 28 Ks, and I think he'd done maybe a bike ride as well. Like, he's super fit guy, but was just working so hard to get, I think he was like 215, 220 pace per 100. And then just by tidying up a couple of things and knowing what he was doing wrong and what he had to change, then he sent me a message this morning and he's down to, I think it's like 158. So he did a 1,500 meter swim. And like, it's no surprise when you actually see the difference, the before and after, but it just really came down to improving his technique. So in terms of how do you go about it, because there's so much going on when you swim, and it's, even like for me, it's so easy to overthink it. We've kind of got these 5 core principles on our website where it starts with breathing. So if you're hyperventilating or you're panicked in the water, there's no hope with anything else. So we've got to get the breathing right. And the first thing with that often is just making sure that people are exhaling the right way. A lot of people breathe out through their mouth, and it kind of leads to this panicked type of breathing. Whereas if you can exhale primarily through your nose and have this trickle of air and then a bigger exhale where clear the lungs as you're turning your head, that's a much more comfortable way, because if you are just breathing in and then straight away blowing everything out, you're going to feel gassed pretty quickly. So it starts with breathing. Then we just work on body position and balance in the water. So just starting to get horizontal instead of with the legs and dropping. And then we go on to rotation and recovery. And then after that, we go into catch and pull. And then we go into kind of the rhythm and timing of the whole thing. And that's kind of like the dance element of it. That's where the art of it really comes in. But if you follow that sort of, step-by-step way of approaching it, that's a pretty good way to keep it simple and know the right thing to focus on at the right time. So you could almost go, look, my breathing's sweet. Cool. Check that off. Move on to the next thing.
I really liked your 5 core principles, and I wanted to ask you about that on this podcast. And I wanted to ask you about that second one, the rotation, because there must be a fine line there between trying to get the rotation right and then not fall into the trap of crossing over like you were talking about before.
Yeah. And look, when I first started swimming, I was probably 13 years old. Ian Thorpe came out with this, wasn't a DVD then, it was like a VHS tape. And I used to watch that and I saw, well, he rotates a lot. And so I sort of took that as you got to rotate to 90 degrees. It's like almost rolling side to side. And then when I actually sort of looked into it a bit more, no, it's more like a rocking side to side. And there's a swim coach, Carlin Pipes, who made that distinction. I sort of took that from her, is you want to rock side to side. Think of that as about 45 degrees rotation through your shoulders as opposed to 90 degrees. So it's, that way you can keep your stroke rate up, because it's going to take you so much longer to roll to 90 degrees. And plus trying to get a good catch, if you're that far on your side and that arm's out in front, it's like, it doesn't matter how good your flexibility is, it's going to be very difficult to get a good catch. So the concept that I quite like with this is skating from side to side. So when I was coaching on Saturday, I was driving to the pool. There was a guy about my age. He had his rollerblades on. He was just as free as a bird, roller skating along. And I thought I hadn't seen that for so many years, so I thought it was quite funny. But that's the kind of concept or the comparison I use with swimming, is when you are going from your right arm to your left arm, it's sort of like skating from your right side to your left side, because someone on rollerblades or ice skates isn't going back and forth really fast. It's just they've got that little bit of travel time. And so with a bit of a rock side to side and the concept of skating, that's when you can really feel like the effort comes down a whole lot, because it's almost like you've got this point of rest in a way, not like you're stopping and pausing, but that point where you feel like, oh, that's easy. And it's a big difference compared to that treadmill that we were talking about before.